Chapter 1. The Weight of Roses. The smell of dying roses has been in my apartment for 3 weeks now. It clings to my clothes, my hair, the threadbare blankets I haven't washed since before my father died. I can't escape it. The shop downstairs is full of flowers I can't sell, arrangements I can't finish, stems I can't bring myself to throw away. Everything is wilting, including me. I stood in the middle of my tiny apartment above petal and stem, staring at the stack of bills on my kitchen table. There were so many. White envelopes, yellow envelopes, red ink demanding payment, threats of repossession, foreclosure, bankruptcy. My hands trembled as I picked up the top one. Final notice. Amount due, $47,382.64. That was just one of them. The total debt was higher. So much higher I'd stopped counting. My father had been a good man. Kind, generous, beloved in the neighborhood. He'd built this flower shop from nothing, spent 30 years growing it into something beautiful. And then he died, and I discovered that the beautiful thing he'd built was built on lies. He'd borrowed money from everyone. Banks, private lenders, people I'd never heard of. He'd taken loans against the shop, against our apartment, against things I didn't even know he owned. And now it was all mine. I was 26 years old, alone in the world, and I owed more money than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. Leo. A knock on the door. Grace's voice, soft and worried. You in there? I opened the door. Grace stood in the hallway, her face pinched with concern. She was holding a bag of groceries. She'd been doing that for me lately, bringing food I barely touched. You look terrible, she said. Thanks. When's the last time you ate? I don't remember. She pushed past me, set the groceries on the counter, and started unpacking. I watched her move through my tiny apartment like she was trying to fix everything with sheer force of will. She was the only person who still visited. The only person who hadn't given up on me. The bank called again, I said. Grace froze. They're taking the shop. They're taking everything. I can't. My voice cracked. I can't save it, Grace. I've tried everything. She turned to face me, and I saw the tears in her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. We'll figure something out. There's nothing to figure out. The debt is too big. I trailed off, unable to say it out loud. My father had died and left me nothing except a mountain of debt and a cryptic warning I still didn't understand. Never let the Ashford family own what belongs to us. I'd always thought he was just being paranoid. Toward the end of his life, he'd become obsessed with that warning. He'd say it to me in his sleep, mumble it when he was too sick to know what he was saying. I never understood what it meant. I still didn't. But I was about to. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I'd stopped answering calls from unknown numbers weeks ago. But something made me pick it up. Leo Chin? Yes. This is Thompson and Associates. We're calling regarding your debt portfolio. We need you to come to our office. My stomach dropped. I already told you I can't pay. I don't have the money. That's not why we're calling, Mr. Chin. The voice was clipped, professional, utterly devoid of emotion. Your debt has been purchased in full. We need you to sign the transfer documents. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Purchased? By who? The pause that followed seemed to stretch forever. By Ashford Holdings, Mr. Chin. The new creditor will be in touch with you directly. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand. Ashford Holdings. The name echoed in my head like a curse. My father's warning. The family he'd been so afraid of. The name I'd heard whispered in the worst moments of my childhood. Leo. Grace's voice was distant, underwater. What happened? But I couldn't answer. Because in that moment, I understood something terrible. My father hadn't been paranoid. He'd been running from something. And now it had finally caught up with me. The Ashford Holdings Tower was the tallest building in the city. It rose above everything else like a monument to ambition, glass and steel gleaming in the afternoon sun. I stood at the entrance, feeling small and insignificant, clutching a folder of documents that felt heavier than they should. I'd never been inside a building like this. Everything was marble and polished metal, security guards in tailored suits, Employees moving with purpose like they were part of a machine. I was a ghost in the middle of it all, invisible and unimportant. The receptionist directed me to the top floor. Of course. The CEO's office. The elevator ride was silent and too fast. My reflection in the polished steel doors looked pale, haunted, like a person who'd stopped living weeks ago. My dark hair was a mess, my clothes were wrinkled, my eyes were ringed with exhaustion. I looked exactly like what I was, a desperate man waiting for the hammer to fall. The top floor opened into a vast lobby. More marble, more security, more silence. A woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes sat behind a desk, regarding me with obvious disapproval. "Mr. Chen, Mr. Ashford is expecting you." She led me down a corridor to a set of double doors. They swung open silently, and I stepped into the office of the most powerful man in the country. I'd seen Lucien Ashford's picture in magazines, on television, on billboards. The media called him the Ice King, and in photographs, that was exactly what he looked like. Cold, composed, untouchable. The reality was different. He sat behind a massive desk, but he wasn't looking at papers or screens. He was looking at me. His gray eyes were fixed on my face like he was memorizing every detail, every line, every shadow. He was younger than I expected. 34, maybe 35. His dark hair was immaculate. His suit was worth more than my entire life. His cheekbones could cut glass. He was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, dangerous, sharp, made to cut. But it was his eyes that undid me. There was something in them that didn't match the Ice King persona. Something almost desperate, almost hungry. He looked at me like I was a ghost he'd been waiting to see for a very long time. "Mr. Chen," he said. His voice was low, controlled, but I heard the tremor beneath it. "Thank you for coming. Why did you buy my debt?" The question came out harsher than I intended. But I didn't care. I was tired of being polite. Tired of pretending I wasn't terrified. Lucien Ashford stood up slowly, walking around the desk until he was standing in front of me. He was taller than I'd realized. I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. "I bought it because I wanted to," he said. "I wanted to meet you." That doesn't make sense. Most things that matter don't at first. He reached for a folder on his desk, a simple black folder with no markings. He handed it to me. "Read this." I opened it. The first page was a contract. The second page was a contract. The next 8 pages were all contracts, legal documents, clauses and subclauses and fine print. I started scanning, looking for the trap. The terms were bizarre. I would live at his estate until my debt was paid. No salary. No explanation. I would be provided with everything I needed, room, board, clothing, but I would not be allowed to leave. I looked up at him. "This is illegal. You can't force someone to live in your house." "I'm not forcing you, Mr. Chen. I'm offering you a choice." His voice was calm, measured. "You can sign the contract and live in my estate until your debt is paid. Or you can refuse, and I'll call the debt collectors who were already planning to take everything you own. The shop, the apartment, everything." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You do that? You destroy my life." "I do that." His gaze was steady, unwavering. "But that's not what I want." "What do you want?" He was close now. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clenching at his sides. "I want you to figure it out," he said. "There's a condition in the contract. Read it." I turned the pages, my hands shaking. Near the end I found the clause. "The signatory agrees that no means of egress shall be sought until the purpose of this arrangement is fully understood by both parties. Upon determination of the purpose, this contract shall be deemed fulfilled." I looked up at him. "You want me to figure out why you bought me?" "Yes. And until I do, I'm trapped in your house." Trapped is such a strong word. It's the right word. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe. He looked at me like I'd just said something that cut him to the bone. "Sign the contract, Leo," he said quietly. "Please." The way he said my name, Like he was tasting it, like he'd been waiting years to say it out loud, made something in my chest shift. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want to explain it. I signed the contract. Lucien Ashford took the folder from me and placed it on his desk. Then he looked at me again, and this time, the ice cracked. "Welcome home," he said. I stood there in the office of the most dangerous man in the country, holding a contract that trapped me in a gilded cage, and I thought about my father's dying words. Never let the Ashford family own what belongs to us. I'd failed him. The Ashfords own me now. But as I looked into Lucien's gray eyes, eyes that held more grief than any man's should, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Something important. Something that would change everything. I just didn't know what it was yet. Chapter 2, The Gilded Cage. The Ashford estate sat on the outskirts of the city, sprawling across acres of meticulously maintained land. I'd seen pictures of it in magazines, the kind of architectural marvel that made billionaires famous and ordinary people feel inadequate. But pictures didn't capture the scale of it. The gates alone were taller than my apartment building. The car pulled through them slowly, and I pressed my face to the window like a child seeing something impossible. The driveway wound through gardens that could have been lifted from a royal palace, past fountains and sculptures and hedges trimmed into impossible shapes. The house itself emerged from the landscape like something out of a dream, glass and steel and stone, all sharp angles and cold beauty. Lucien's voice came from the seat beside me. "What do you think?" I turned to look at him. He was watching me with that same intensity, like I was something precious he'd finally gotten his hands on. "It's too big," I said. "Too perfect. It doesn't feel real." Something flickered in his gray eyes. "It's not a home. It's a fortress." "Then why do you live here?" "Because fortresses are safe." The car stopped at the entrance. A man in a crisp black suit was waiting for us, tall, impassive, with the kind of face that revealed nothing. He opened my door and I stepped out, my legs unsteady on the gravel. "Mr. Chen," the man said. "I'm Calder Marsh, the estate butler. I'll be overseeing your stay." His voice was flat, professional. I got the sense he was memorizing every detail about me, cataloging my weaknesses. "Where's my room?" I asked. "This way." He led me through the entrance, and I felt my breath catch. The interior was even more overwhelming than the exterior. Massive windows that let in the dying light, marble floors that gleamed like water, a chandelier that probably cost more than my father's shop. Everything was beautiful. Everything was cold. We walked down a long corridor lined with doors. Every door had a biometric lock, a small panel that required a fingerprint or a code. I counted them as we passed. 7 doors. 8. 9. "Here's your room," Calder said, stopping at the 10th. He pressed his thumb to the panel, and the door clicked open. He stepped aside and gestured for me to enter. The room was enormous. A bed that could fit 4 people dominated the center, dressed in white linens that looked too clean to touch. There was a sitting area with plush chairs, a desk, a bookshelf filled with books I'd never read. The windows faced the gardens, and beyond them, I could see a lake glittering in the fading light. I walked to the window and pressed my hand to the glass. It was cold. Everything was cold. "Mr. Ashford will join you for dinner at 8, Calder said. "Auntie May will bring fresh clothes. If you need anything, press the intercom by the bed." I turned to face him. "Am I a prisoner?" His expression didn't change. "You're a guest." "That's not what I asked." For a moment, something shifted in his eyes, something almost like approval. Then it was gone. "You're a guest," he repeated. "But the doors lock from the outside. For your protection." He left me alone in the room, and I stood there for a long time, staring at the door that locked from the outside. I didn't cry. I'd stopped crying weeks ago, after I'd run out of tears for my father, for my shop, for my life. Now I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only the shell. Auntie May came with clothes, simple things, expensive but comfortable. She was a tiny woman with silver-streaked hair and warm eyes that assessed me with obvious concern. She pressed a cup of tea into my hands and told me to drink it. "Mr. Ashford hasn't brought anyone here in years," she said. You must be special. I'm just a debt he bought. She chuckled, a soft sound that seemed out of place in the cold elegance of the estate. That's what he wants you to think. But I've known Lucien since he was a boy. He doesn't do anything without a reason. What's his reason? Auntie May looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching my face. Then she shook her head. That's not my story to tell. She left, and I was alone again. Dinner was at 8. Calder escorted me to the dining room, a vast space with a table that could seat 30. But only 2 places were set, one at the head of the table, one to its right. Lucien was already there, seated in the head chair. He'd changed out of his suit into something more casual, a dark sweater and tailored trousers. The casual clothes made him look younger, almost approachable. But his eyes were still the same, intense, watchful, hungry. Sit, he said. I took the seat to his right. A footman appeared with the first course, something I couldn't identify, plated like art. I stared at it without touching it. Eat, Lucien said. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten properly in weeks. I know. I looked up sharply. How do you know? Because I've been watching you. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I felt my face flush with something that might have been anger. You've been stalking me? I've been concerned about you. He set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. Your father's death, your financial struggles, the way you've been isolating yourself. I know it all, Leo. And you didn't think to intervene? You just let me drown until you could buy my debt. His expression flickered, pain, regret, something I couldn't name. I couldn't intervene. Not until it was legally possible. I had to wait. Wait for what? For the right moment. For you to be desperate enough to listen. I pushed my plate away. You're insane. You're actually insane. I've been called worse. He wasn't angry. He looked at me with something almost like affection, and that made it worse. I wanted him to be the villain, the cold-hearted billionaire who bought people like commodities. I didn't want him to look at me like I mattered. Your father, Lucien said slowly, used to work for the Ashford family. Did you know that? My heart stopped. No. He was the financial manager. He handled everything, our accounts, our investments, our secrets. He was trusted. He was family. He paused, his jaw tightening. And then he betrayed us. Betrayed you how? He took something that didn't belong to him. Something precious. And he disappeared. The words echoed in my head. My father's warning. Never let the Ashford family own what belongs to us. I thought about my father's fear, his obsession, the way he'd spent the last years of his life looking over his shoulder. I thought about the things he'd never told me, the secrets he'd taken to his grave. I stood up abruptly. I don't believe you. Leo. I don't believe you. My father was a good man. He was honest and kind and... he was running. I froze. He was running and he was hiding and he was terrified. And he died without ever telling you the truth. Lucien's voice was quiet, almost gentle. I'm not trying to destroy your image of him. I'm trying to help you understand. Understand what? He rose from his seat, moving around the table until he was standing in front of me. His presence was overwhelming, tall and solid and impossibly close. Understand why I bought your debt, he said softly. Understand why you're here. Just tell me. Stop playing games and just tell me. I can't. Why not? His hand came up, and for a moment I thought he was going to touch my face. But he stopped himself, his fingers hovering inches from my skin. Because you wouldn't believe me, he said. Because the truth is too strange, too painful, too impossible. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to remember. Remember what? His gray eyes burned with something that looked like grief. Remember us. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. Everything was too much, too fast, too confusing. I pulled away from him, stepping back until I hit the wall. I want to leave, I said. You can't. It's not, this isn't. Leo. His voice was soft, almost pleading. Give me a chance. Give me time. But why should I? Because I've waited 20 years for you to come home. I stared at him, my mind reeling. 20 years. I'd only been alive for 26 years. And I didn't remember him. I'd never seen his face before today. Except I'd dreamed of gray eyes my whole life. Except I'd always been afraid of fire and water, two things I'd never experienced. Except the boy in my nightmares had the same sharp cheekbones, the same dark hair, the same way of looking at me like I was everything. You knew me, I whispered. We knew each other. Yes. How? When? He was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was old, worn, creased from years of handling. He handed it to me. I looked down at the image and felt the world tilt. Two boys stood in front of a lake, their arms around each other. The older one was clearly Lucien, younger, softer, but unmistakably him. The younger boy had dark hair and brown eyes and a dimple in his left cheek. A dimple I still had. Who is this? I asked, though I already knew. Us, Lucien said softly. Before you forgot. Before they took you away. I stared at the photograph, at the boy who looked exactly like me, at the boy who looked exactly like Lucien. And I remember. Fire. A hand pulling me away. A boy screaming my name. I dropped the photograph. No. No, this is impossible. Is it? I looked up at him, my heart hammering. Who are you? Who are you really? His gray eyes were shining with unshed tears. I'm the boy who's been searching for you my entire life. Chapter 3. The Boy in the Photograph. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photograph. Two boys, arms around each other, smiling like the world would always be kind. One of them was Lucien. The other was me. And I couldn't remember any of it. The dreams came anyway. Fire. Smoke so thick I couldn't breathe. A hand gripping mine, pulling me through darkness. A boy's voice screaming my name over and over, until the sound became part of the nightmare. I woke gasping, tangled in sheets that felt like they were trying to suffocate me. The room was dark, the windows showing nothing but blackness. I sat up and pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to force the images away. It was just a dream. Just a nightmare. But I knew it wasn't. Morning came slowly, pale light creeping through the windows like a reluctant visitor. I dressed in the clothes Auntie May had left. Simple but expensive, soft fabrics that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. I felt like a fraud wearing them. Calder appeared at my door with breakfast, setting it on the small table by the window. He didn't speak, didn't meet my eyes. Just delivered the food and left. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. My mind was still trapped in the nightmare, still hearing that voice screaming my name. After breakfast, I decided to explore. The estate was enormous, a labyrinth of corridors and rooms that seemed designed to confuse. I wandered through hallways filled with art I couldn't appreciate, past doors I couldn't open, through spaces that felt more like museums than living areas. Every door had a biometric lock. Every hallway was watched by cameras I could barely see. I was being watched. I'd felt it since I arrived. I found the library on the 3rd floor, a vast room filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, and a fireplace that crackled with life. It was the first warm space I discovered, and I sank into one of the chairs, letting the heat seep into my bones. What are you looking for? I jumped. Lucien stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, watching me with that same unreadable expression. Nothing, I said. Just trying to understand this place. It's not complicated. It's just large. Large and locked and full of secrets. He moved into the room, taking a seat across from me. The firelight played across his features, softening the hard angles of his face. I told you the truth last night, he said. We knew each other. Then why don't I remember? Because you were made to forget. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? Lucien leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his gray eyes fixed on mine. Your father took you away when you were 7. He didn't just take you, he erased you. He had people who could do that, people who could make you forget everything about your life before. You're lying. I'm not. My father wouldn't do that. He loved me. Love isn't always kind, Leo. Sometimes love makes people do terrible things. I stood up, my hands shaking. I don't believe you. I can't. This is insane. You're insane. Maybe. He stood too, moving toward me slowly, like I was a wild animal he was trying not to startle. But I'm also right. And the only way you'll understand is to see for yourself. See what? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. An old-fashioned key, made of brass, worn smooth from years of handling. There's a wing of the estate that's been sealed for 20 years, he said. My mother ordered it closed. She doesn't want anyone to see what's inside. And what's inside? You. He handed me the key. It was warm from his body heat, heavy in my palm. Go, he said. See for yourself. And then come find me when you're ready to talk. He walked out of the library, leaving me alone with the key and 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. The sealed wing was at the far end of the estate, behind a door that looked like every other door. But when I pressed the key into the lock, it turned easily, clicking open with a sound that seemed louder than it should. I pushed the door open and stepped into a different world. The air was stale, dusty, untouched for years. The corridor beyond was smaller than the main hallways, lined with doors that were painted in cheerful colors, yellow, blue, green. Children's colors. My heart was pounding as I walked down the corridor. The first door was ajar, and I pushed it open. It was a child's room. A small bed with cartoon sheets, a toy box overflowing with stuffed animals, drawings taped to the walls. The drawings were crude, childish, stick figures and suns and flowers. And on the wall, a single drawing that made my breath catch. 2 figures holding hands. One tall, one small. Both smiling. And at the bottom, written in a child's handwriting, me and Leo. I stumbled back, hitting the wall. My hands were shaking as I turned to the next room. This one was a playroom. Toys scattered across the floor, a child's table with chairs that were too small, bookshelves filled with picture books. And on the table, a photograph in a simple frame. I picked it up. 2 boys, arms around each other, laughing at something off camera. The younger one, me, was missing a front tooth. The older one, Lucien, was looking at me like I was the most important person in the world. I didn't remember. I couldn't remember. But I could feel it. The ghost of something warm and safe, something I'd lost and never known I'd had. I walked through every room, my feet carrying me without conscious thought. The bathroom with the small tub. The kitchen with the tiny chairs. The room that must have been Lucien's, filled with adolescent things, books and music and a computer that was decades out of date. And then I found the last room. It was the master bedroom, must have been Lucien's mother's. But it was empty of personal effects, cleaned out like someone had erased all evidence of its occupant. The only thing left was a single photograph on the nightstand. A family portrait. Lucien's father, his mother, 2 boys. Marcus, the older brother I'd heard about. And Lucien, younger, softer, still smiling. But it was the father who made me freeze. I'd seen his face before. I'd seen it in my nightmares. He was the man who'd pulled me away from the lake. He was the man who'd screamed at me, called me names, told me I was nothing. He was the man who'd started the fire. I dropped the photograph, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't hold it. And then I ran. I found Lucien in the greenhouse at the edge of the estate. He was surrounded by flowers, roses and lilies and orchids, all the things I'd grown up with. He turned when I entered, his expression shifting from calm to concern. You found it, he said. Who was that man? My voice was shaking. The man in the photograph, the man who, I couldn't finish. His name was William Ashford. My father. I felt the world tilt. Your father? I dreamed about him. About the fire, about the lake. He was the one who. I know. Lucien's voice was gentle, pained. He was the one who tried to hurt you. Why? Lucien was silent for a long moment. Then he moved toward me, stopping just inches away. Because I loved you, he said. Because I was 14 and I loved a 7-year-old boy with dark hair and brown eyes, and my father couldn't stand it. He thought you were a weakness, something that would make me soft. So he tried to take you away. He nearly succeeded. He did succeed. For 20 years. I looked at him, really looked at him. The cold billionaire everyone feared. The Ice King who'd built an empire from nothing. The man who'd bought my debt to trap me in his house. He was just a boy who'd loved someone and lost them. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Why did you bring me here?" Lucien's hand came up, cupping my face with impossible gentleness. His thumb brushed my cheek, wiping away tears I hadn't realized I was crying. "I want you to remember," he said. "I want you to know who you were. Who we were. I want you to come back to me." "I don't think I can't." "You can." He was so close now, his forehead almost touching mine. "I'll help you. I'll keep you safe. I'll give you all the time you need." "And if I never remember?" His eyes darkened with something that looked like grief. "Then I'll still be here. I'll still love you. I've waited 20 years, Leo. I can wait 20 more." I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The weight of his words was crushing and beautiful and terrifying. He pulled away slowly, his hand dropping from my face. "You should rest. Tomorrow, I'll show you the rest of the estate. There's more you need to see." I nodded, unable to form words. Lucien turned to leave, but at the door he paused. "Leo." "Yes. I'm sorry. For all of it. For everything my family did to you. I know that's not enough. But I'm sorry." And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the greenhouse, surrounded by flowers I couldn't see, drowning in memories I couldn't remember. Chapter 4. The Boy in the Flames. I returned to the sealed wing the next morning. Lucien hadn't stopped me. He'd simply watched from the hallway as I walked past, his gray eyes filled with something that looked like hope. I didn't know what he expected me to find. I didn't know what I was looking for. But I knew I had to keep searching. The playroom felt different in the daylight. The dust motes danced in the slanted light, and the toys seemed less like artifacts and more like echoes of a life I'd lived. I ran my fingers over the small table, the tiny chairs, the books with their worn spines. And then I noticed something I'd missed before. A loose floorboard near the corner. The nails were rusted, the wood slightly raised, like someone had pried it open years ago and never properly closed it. I knelt down and worked my fingers under the edge. The board came up with a groan, revealing a small cavity beneath. Inside was a metal box, tarnished with age, secured with a simple latch. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were papers. Old papers, yellowed with time, covered in handwriting I recognized. My father's handwriting. I pulled them out carefully, spreading them across the floor. There were letters, official documents, photographs. And at the bottom, a single envelope marked, "For Leo." I opened it with trembling fingers. "My dearest son. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the truth has found you anyway. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I've done. I worked for the Ashford family for 10 years. I managed their money, their secrets, their crimes. I thought I was protecting you by staying close to them, but I was only putting you in danger. You were 7 years old when you met Lucien. You loved him. He loved you. I've never seen you happier than when you were with that boy. But his father, William, was a monster. He saw what you were to Lucien, a weakness, a vulnerability, something that could be used against him. So he decided to destroy you. The fire was his doing. He tried to kill you, Leah. He would have succeeded if Lucien hadn't saved you. I took you away to protect you. I paid people to erase your memories, doctors who could make you forget everything about your life before. I thought if you didn't remember, you'd be safe. I was wrong. They're still looking for you. The Ashford family wants you dead, or worse, they want to use you against Lucien. I've spent my entire life running, and I've dragged you with me. I'm sorry. I love you. I hope you can forgive me. Your father, Julian. I read the letter 3 times. 4 times. The words blurred together, and I realized I was crying. He'd taken me away to protect me. He'd erased my memories to save my life. And he'd carried that guilt until the day he died. The other documents were worse. Bank records, transfer papers, evidence of money laundering and embezzlement. My father had been the Ashford family's financial fixer. He'd covered up their crimes, cleaned their money, built their empire on lies. And then he'd stolen something from them. Something precious. I didn't go to Lucien immediately. I sat in that dusty room for what felt like hours, piecing together the fragments of a truth I'd spent my life avoiding. The fire. The boy with the gray eyes. And then I remembered. It came like a flood, washing over me with such force that I gasped. The memory was sharp, vivid, unbelievably real. I was 7. I was standing by the lake, holding the hand of a 14-year-old boy with gray eyes and dark hair. He was telling me a story about a knight who rescued a prince from a dragon. When I grow up, he said, I'll rescue you. I'll find you anywhere. Promise? I asked. Promise? He squeezed my hand. I'll always find you. And then the fire came. I screamed. The memory tore through me, smoke and heat and a man's hands grabbing me, pulling me away from the gray-eyed boy. I fought, I scratched, I screamed his name. Lucien. But he was gone. They'd taken him away, and I was alone in the flames. And then the darkness. And then nothing. I came back to myself on the floor of the playroom, my body shaking, my face wet with tears. I'd remembered it all. I found Lucien in his office, hunched over his desk, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. When he heard me enter, he looked up, and something in his expression shifted. You remembered, he said. Yes. He stood slowly, moving toward me like he was afraid I'd disappear. What do you remember? Everything. My voice was raw. The fire. Your father. The way you held my hand. The promise you made. His composure cracked. His face twisted with grief, and before I could stop myself, I was moving toward him, pulling him into my arms. He stiffened for a moment, then collapsed against me, his body shaking with silent sobs. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered. I thought you were gone forever. I'm here. I'm here. We stood like that for a long time, two broken people holding each other in the ruins of a past we'd both been running from. Finally, Lucien pulled back, his eyes red-rimmed but steady. Your father wasn't the only one who helped you forget. My mother paid for your memory erasure. She wanted you gone just as much as my father did. Your mother? She's still alive. She lives in the East Wing. I've kept her confined there for years. I stared at him. You imprisoned your own mother? She helped destroy you, he said, his voice turning hard. She's lucky I didn't do worse. I should have felt horror. Revulsion. Instead, I felt something else. Something that scared me more than his confession. Understanding. Because I would have done the same. I would have burned the whole world down for the boy in the photograph. And that was the moment I knew I was in love with him. Chapter 5. The Woman in the East Wing. The East Wing was different from the rest of the estate. Darker. Colder. The air smelled of antiseptic and something older, something that made my skin prickle with unease. Lucien walked beside me, his hand brushing mine but not quite holding it. He was tense, his jaw set, his gray eyes fixed on the door at the end of the corridor. She's been here for 8 years, he said quietly. Since I took control of the company. I couldn't kill her, she's still my mother. But I couldn't let her walk free either. You imprisoned her. I protected everyone she might have hurt. He stopped walking, turning to face me. Including you. I should have been horrified. I should have run. But I'd seen what the Ashford family was capable of. I'd seen the flames in my memories. And I understood. Open the door, I said. He did. The room beyond was luxurious, all silk and velvet and soft lighting. A woman sat in a chair by the window, her back to us, her silver hair cascading down her shoulders. She didn't turn when we entered. Lucien, she said, her voice calm and cold. You've brought company. Hello, mother. Vivian Ashford turned slowly, and I saw her face for the first time. She was beautiful in the way old money was beautiful, refined, elegant, utterly untouchable. Her eyes were the same pale gray as Lucien's, but there was no warmth in them. Only calculation. So this is the boy, she said, looking at me like I was a specimen under glass. Julian's son. The one who ruined everything. Don't, Lucien said sharply. Don't what? Speak the truth. She laughed, a brittle sound. You think I don't know what you've done? You think I don't know why you brought him here? Then tell me, I said, stepping forward. Tell me why. Vivian's eyes flickered with something, surprise, perhaps, or amusement. You don't remember, do you? Even now, after all this time, you don't remember. I remember the fire. I remember your husband trying to kill me. Her expression didn't change. William was a fool. A violent, unstable fool. But he wasn't wrong about you. Mother. Lucien's voice was a warning. He was right, she continued, ignoring him. You were a weakness. My son was 14, brilliant, destined for greatness. And he was throwing it all away for a 7-year-old nobody. I couldn't allow it. You tried to kill me. I tried to remove you. There's a difference. She stood, moving toward me with predatory grace. The fire was William's idea, crude and ineffective. I would have been more subtle. I would have made you disappear quietly without the mess. The memory erasure, I said. That was you. Of course. Julian was so easy to manipulate. He loved you desperately, you know. He would have done anything to protect you, including selling his soul to me. That's not true, I said, but my voice was shaking. It is true. I gave him money, a new identity, a way to escape. In exchange, he took you away and made sure you would never remember the Ashford family. He kept his end of the bargain well. I felt something crack inside me. My father had been a victim. He'd been manipulated, threatened, forced to make impossible choices. But he'd still made the choices. He'd still taken me away. He'd still erased my memories. He'd still spent the rest of his life running from a past he'd never explained. What happened to the money? Lucien asked. The money you gave Julian. He died in debt. Vivian's smile was cold. He spent it. Every penny. And more. He couldn't stop running, couldn't stop hiding. The money was never enough to make him feel safe. Is that why you bought my debt? I asked Lucien. Because my father owed your mother? Lucien shook his head. No. I bought your debt because it was the only way to get you here. The only way to make you safe. Safe from what? From them. He gestured at his mother. From the family that's been hunting you for 20 years. Vivian laughed. Don't be so dramatic, Lucien. I've never wanted the boy dead. I wanted him gone. There's a difference. You wanted to use him, Lucien said flatly. You wanted to control me through him. That's why you kept the photograph. That's why you never destroyed the evidence. Evidence of what? I felt the shift before I understood it. Lucien was moving toward a hidden safe in the wall, his fingers pressing against a panel I hadn't noticed. The safe swung open, revealing a small collection of documents. Evidence of the Ashford family's crimes, Lucien said. Evidence of my father's murder. Evidence of everything you and Marcus have been hiding for 2 decades. Vivian's composure cracked. You wouldn't. You can't. I can and I will. He pulled out a thick folder, holding it up like a trophy. This is everything I need to destroy the family name. The embezzlement, the money laundering, the murder. It's all here. That's why you built your empire, I said slowly. That's why you became so powerful. Not for money. For evidence. Lucien's gray eyes met mine. I never wanted power for its own sake. I wanted enough power to bring them down. And enough power to protect you. I looked at the folder in his hands, at the woman who'd ruined my life, at the man who'd spent 20 years planning her destruction. I'm not going to let you do this, Vivian said. I've spent too long protecting this family. You've spent too long destroying it, Lucien replied. And it ends now. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt something cold settle in my chest. What about me? I asked. What happens to me when this is over? Lucien turned to me, his expression softening. You go home. You keep your shop. You live your life. The debt is gone. I'm canceling it. You're free. Free from you? His face flickered with pain. If that's what you want. I didn't answer. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. The door to Vivian's room closed behind us, and Lucien led me back through the estate. His hand found mine, warm and steady. I didn't tell you the whole truth, he said quietly. About the photograph. What about it? I found it in my father's safe. He kept it all those years. He wanted to remind me of what I'd lost. He thought it would break me. Did it? Lucien stopped walking. He turned to face me, his gray eyes burning with intensity. It made me stronger, he said. Every time I saw it, I remembered what I was fighting for. I remembered you. I pulled my hand away. You don't even know me anymore. You knew a 7-year-old boy. That's not who I am. No, he agreed. You're not a child anymore. You're a man who's been through hell and come out the other side. And I love you anyway. I felt my breath catch. You can't. You don't. I do. He stepped closer, his hands cupping my face. I've loved you for 20 years, Leo. I've never stopped. And I'll love you for 20 more, whether you stay or go. I should have pushed him away. I should have told him it was impossible. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned into his touch and closed my eyes. And then the door burst open. Marcus Ashford stood in the doorway, his face twisted with rage. Behind him, 2 men in dark suits held guns. Reunions, he said coldly. How touching. Now let's talk about what happens next. Chapter 6. The Price of Truth. The guns were aimed at us. Marcus stood in the doorway, his smile sharp and cruel, like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. You think you can destroy me? He said, stepping into the room. You think you can take everything I've worked for? You've worked for nothing, Lucien replied, his voice steady despite the weapons trained on him. You inherited everything. And then you tried to destroy it. I tried to protect it. Marcus's eyes flicked to me. This is the boy? The one who ruined everything. Don't talk about him. Or what? You'll kill me? Marcus laughed, a cold sound. You can't kill me, little brother. You're too weak. Too soft. Too afraid of being like father. Being like father isn't a threat. It's a warning. The 2 men with guns shifted uncomfortably. I could see them exchange glances, uncertainty flickering across their faces. They were hired muscle, not loyal soldiers. And they were starting to realize this wasn't a simple job. He's been waiting for this, I said, stepping forward. Your brother. He's been waiting for you to show your hand. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Shut up. No, I don't think I will. I was shaking, but I forced my voice to stay steady. You've been running this family for years, keeping secrets, burying bodies. But you're not as smart as you think. I said shut up. You're afraid. You're afraid of Lucien, afraid of what he knows, afraid of losing everything. That's why you came here tonight. Not to win. To survive. Marcus lunged at me, his hand reaching for my throat. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. And Lucien moved. It happened so fast I barely saw it. He stepped between us, his body a shield, his hand catching Marcus's wrist and twisting it until he cried out in pain. Touch him again, Lucien said, his voice dangerously quiet, and I'll break your arm. Marcus tried to pull away, but Lucien held firm. The armed men raised their guns, but Lucien didn't flinch. He didn't even look at them. You, he said, his eyes fixed on his brother. You're going to tell them to stand down. Right now. Marcus laughed through his pain. Or what? Or I'll show them what you've been hiding. Lucien reached into his pocket with his free hand and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen, and a video began to play. Marcus's voice, clear and damning. The evidence is gone. The boy is gone. No one will ever know what we did. Marcus's face went white. Where did you get that? From your mother's safe. She's been keeping records for years. Insurance, in case you ever tried to destroy her. The armed men lowered their weapons. One of them took a step back, shaking his head. This isn't what we signed up for, he said. Then leave, Lucien said. Now. They didn't hesitate. They turned and walked out, leaving Marcus alone and defenseless. Lucien released his brother's wrist, stepping back. Marcus stumbled, his face twisted with rage and fear. You think this is over? Marcus spat. You think you've won? I think I've barely started. Lucien tucked the phone back into his pocket. You're going to prison, Marcus. For murder, for embezzlement, for everything you've done to this family. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Marcus looked at me, his eyes burning with hatred. This is your fault. You and your pathetic father. You destroyed everything. No, I said quietly. You destroyed it yourself. Marcus lunged again, but this time I was ready. I stepped aside, letting him crash into the wall. He slid to the floor, dazed and defeated. Lucien looked down at him, his expression unreadable. It's over. And for a moment I believed him. The aftermath was chaos. Security arrived, led by Tom Novak, the chief I'd glimpsed in the hallways. Marcus was cuffed and taken away, screaming threats that no one listened to. The police were called, the evidence was handed over, and the Ashford empire began to crumble. I watched it all from the library, sitting in the same leather chair where I'd first confronted Lucien. I felt hollow, emptied of everything I'd been carrying for weeks. Lucien found me there, hours later, looking exhausted but somehow lighter. It's done, he said. Marcus is in custody. The police have enough evidence to put him away for decades. And your mother? She's under house arrest. For now. He sank into the chair across from me, rubbing his temples. She'll probably die in confinement. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Relieved. Complicated. He looked up at me, his gray eyes soft. How do you feel? I thought about it. The fire. The boy with the gray eyes. The father who'd loved me enough to erase my memories. The man who'd loved me enough to wait 20 years. Tired, I said. And confused. And a little bit like I've been living someone else's life. You've been living a lie, he agreed. But it doesn't have to stay that way. What do you mean? He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression earnest. You can have your memories back. All of them. There are treatments, therapies. You could remember everything. 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 I thought about it. The fire. The pain. The boy I'd loved and lost. I don't know if I want to, I said. The memories I've gotten back already, they're beautiful. But they're also painful. I'm not sure I want to relive the rest. Lucien nodded slowly. That's your choice. I won't push you. But you want me to. I want you to have the freedom to choose. That's all I've ever wanted. I looked at him, really looked at him. The Ice King. The Ruthless. The man who'd built an empire to find a boy he'd lost 20 years ago. You waited for me, I said. All this time. You never gave up. I couldn't. You were the only thing that made sense in my life. I stood up, moving toward him. He rose too, meeting me in the center of the room. I don't remember everything, I said. But I remember enough. I remember the promise you made. I remember loving you. His breath caught. Leo. I don't know who I'm going to be when I get my memories back. I don't know if I'll be the same person. But I know that right now, in this moment, I want to be with you. His hand came up, cupping my face with that same impossible gentleness. His thumb traced my cheekbone, my jaw, the curve of my lips. Are you sure? He asked. You've been through so much. I don't want to. I leaned up and kissed him. His whole body went rigid. I felt him hesitate, felt the war between his need for control and his desperate, aching desire. I pressed closer, my hands tangling in his hair, pulling him down to me. And then he broke. His arms wrapped around me, crushing me to his chest. His mouth moved against mine, hungry and desperate and full of 20 years of longing. I felt his tears against my cheek, his heart pounding against my chest. Leo, he breathed against my lips. I can't lose you again. You won't. I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me. I know. I pulled back, just enough to look into his gray eyes. I love you too. The words felt strange on my tongue. I hadn't said them in 20 years. I'd forgotten what they felt like. But now, standing in Lucien's arms, I remembered. I remembered everything. Chapter 7. The Fire Returns. The kiss broke the dam inside me. Memories flooded back in waves, not the gentle trickle I'd experienced before, but a roaring torrent that swept me under. I remembered everything. I remembered the first time I saw Lucien. I was 6 years old, wandering through the Ashford estate while my father worked. I'd gotten lost in the gardens, crying, convinced I'd never find my way back. And then a boy appeared, tall and serious and impossibly kind. "Don't cry," he'd said, taking my hand. "I'll take you home." He'd led me back to the main house, and I'd followed him like he was the sun. I remembered the years that followed. The secret meetings in the greenhouse. The stories he told me, the games we played, the way he looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. I remembered the day he kissed me for the first time. I was 7, he was 14. He'd leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead, so gentle I barely felt it. "One day," he'd whispered, "I'm going to kiss you for real. And you're going to be mine." I'd laughed, not understanding. But I'd felt it, the warmth, the safety, the love. And then the fire. I remembered the fire so clearly it burned me all over again. The smoke, the heat, the way the world turned orange and black. William Ashford's face, twisted with rage, his hands reaching for me. And then Lucien, breaking through the flames like an avenging angel. "Run," he'd screamed. "Run, Leo." I'd run. I'd run until my legs gave out, until my father found me and carried me away. I'd watch the estate burn behind me, watch the boy I loved disappear into the smoke. And then I'd forgotten. "Leo." Lucien's voice cut through the memories. "Leo, what's happening? You're shaking." I looked up at him, my eyes burning with tears. "I remember." "What?" "Everything. All of it. The fire, the lake, the way you saved me." I reached for him, clutching his arms. "I never forgot you." "Not really. I just couldn't remember." His face crumpled. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you." "You did protect me. You saved my life." "Not enough. Not for 20 years. I pulled back, cupping his face in my hands. "Look at me." He did. His gray eyes were bright with tears, so bright they looked like the sky after rain. "You waited for me," I said. "All those years. You never gave up. I told you I wouldn't. I made a promise. Promises can be broken." His hand covered mine, pressing it against his cheek. "Some promises can't. Some promises are carved into your bones." I leaned in and kissed him again, slow and deep and full of everything I'd forgotten. He responded like he'd been starving for me, and he had. 20 years of starvation, all melting away in a single kiss. "I love you," I said against his lips. "I've always loved you. Even when I didn't remember." He made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and crushed me to him. "I love you too. I've loved you since I was 14 years old, and you looked up at me with those big brown eyes and asked me to be your friend. You were my friend. You were so much more than my friend." "I know. I always knew." We stood there in the library, holding each other, letting the past wash over us. The memories were painful, but they were ours. And that made them beautiful. The next day, we went to the lake. Lucien drove us in his black car, following roads I didn't recognize until we reached a place that felt like a dream. The lake house was still standing, abandoned and overgrown, but the water was the same. Blue and calm and endless. "The fire was there," I said, pointing to a patch of scorched earth near the shore. "Your father burned the boathouse. He wanted me inside. He was a monster." "Yes." I turned to look at him. "But you weren't. You were just a boy who loved another boy. And you saved him." "I didn't save you. I was too late. You were in time. I'm still here." He reached for me, his fingers tangling with mine. "I don't know how to be normal, Leo. I don't know how to be anything except this desperate, obsessive, broken version of myself." I squeezed his hand. "You're not broken. You're just scarred. And so am I. Maybe we can be scarred together." He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Not the desperate, obsessive hope of a man who'd been searching for 20 years. Something quieter. Something that might actually last. "I'd like that," he said. "Scarred together." I pulled him down to the shore, to the water's edge, and I took off my shoes. The sand was cold beneath my feet, the water lapping at my toes. "Will you promise me something?" I asked. "Anything. Promise me you'll stop trying to control everything. Promise me you'll let yourself feel things. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy." He was silent for a long moment. The wind ruffled his dark hair, and for a second he looked like the boy I'd known, young and hopeful and full of light. "I promise," he said. "I'll try. That's all I ask." We stood at the edge of the lake, hand in hand, watching the sun set over the water. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt whole. But the past wasn't done with us yet. The call came the next morning. Tom Novak, Lucien's security chief, his voice tight with tension. "Mr. Ashford, you need to come to the estate. There's been an incident." Lucien's face went pale. "What kind of incident?" "Your mother. She's escaped confinement. And she's taken something from the safe." Lucien hung up and turned to me, his gray eyes blazing with something I hadn't seen before. "She has the evidence," he said. "Everything I gathered against Marcus. She's going to destroy it. We'll stop her." "We can't. She's already gone." I grabbed his arm. "Then we find her. We stop her. Together." He looked at me, and I saw the war in his eyes, the need to protect me, the need to control the situation, the desperate, aching love he'd been carrying for 20 years. "Leo, if something happens to you..." "Nothing's going to happen to me." I pulled him close, pressing my forehead to his. "I survived your father's fire. I survived 20 years of forgetting. I can survive your mother's revenge. As long as I have you." His arms wrapped around me, fierce and possessive. "You have me. You've always had me. Then let's go stop her." We ran to the car, Lucien's hand gripping mine like he was afraid I'd disappear. And I let him hold on because I was afraid too. Afraid of losing him again. Afraid of what Lucien Ashford might do. But I wasn't afraid of the fire anymore. Because the boy with the gray eyes was beside me, and I knew he'd never let me burn. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. We found Vivian at the old lake house. The car screeched to a halt on the gravel driveway, and I was out before Lucien could stop me. The house loomed ahead, dark and abandoned, but there was light in the windows, a fire in the hearth, and the smell of smoke in the air. "Stay behind me," Lucien said, his voice sharp with urgency. "Not a chance." We entered together, our footsteps echoing on the rotting floorboards. The house had been empty for decades, but someone had been here. Fresh footprints in the dust. A path leading to the main room. Vivian was waiting for us. She stood by the fireplace, a stack of papers in her hands. The evidence. Everything Lucien had gathered against Marcus, against the Ashford family, against her. "You came," she said, her voice calm and cold. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd lost your nerve." "I don't lose my nerve, Mother." Lucien stepped forward, his body a shield between me and her. "I just take my time. Taking your time gave me time." She smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "Time to find this. Time to decide what to do with it." "You're going to burn it." "Of course." She held a paper over the flames, letting it catch. The fire consumed it greedily, turning evidence to ash. One by one, piece by piece. Until there's nothing left. I moved before I could think. I lunged for the fireplace, grabbing a handful of papers before they could burn. Vivian's hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "You little..." "Let him go." Lucien's voice was ice. He'd moved behind her, his hand on her shoulder, his gray eyes blazing. "Let him go," he repeated, "or I'll burn everything you have left." Vivian laughed, but there was fear in her eyes. "You wouldn't. You couldn't. Try me." The standoff lasted a moment. Then Vivian released me, stepping back from the fire. I clutched the papers to my chest, my heart pounding. "You can't win," she said. "Even if you keep that evidence, you can't destroy this family. We're too powerful, too entrenched. You'll never." "I don't want to destroy the family." Lucien's voice was quiet. "I want to destroy you." She flinched. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Marcus will go to prison," he continued. "You'll go to prison. The family name will be ruined, but the family itself will survive. There are good people in this family, Mother. People who don't deserve to be dragged down by your crimes. Criminals don't deserve anything. Neither do victims. But we get to survive anyway. He looked at me and I understood. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. About closure. About moving forward. I stepped forward, the papers still clutched to my chest. You took everything from me, I said to Vivian. My memories, my childhood, my chance to grow up with the boy I loved. You took it all. I did what I had to do. No. You did what you wanted to do. There's a difference. She stared at me, her gray eyes cold and empty. And for the first time, I saw her for what she really was. Not a monster. Just a woman who'd been so afraid of losing control that she'd destroyed everything she claimed to love. It's over, I said. You've lost. She didn't respond. She just stood there, watching the fire consume what was left of her plans. The police arrived an hour later. Lucien Ashford was taken into custody without resistance. She walked to the squad car like she was attending a garden party, her head held high, her composure intact. But I saw the cracks. The way her hands trembled. The way her eyes darted around, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Marcus was already in custody. The evidence I'd saved was enough to put him away for decades. His mother's confessions sealed his fate. I watched the squad car drive away, and I felt something lift from my chest. The weight I'd been carrying for weeks, for years, really, finally began to ease. It's done, Lucien said, coming to stand beside me. It's finally done. I took his hand. What happens now? Now we figure out what comes next. He looked at me, his gray eyes soft. Together. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, it felt real. The weeks that followed were strange and beautiful. Lucien let me go. He canceled the debt, gave me the freedom to leave, opened the doors of his estate and told me I could walk out anytime I wanted. I stayed. Not because of a contract or a debt or a promise. I stayed because I wanted to. Because every morning I woke up next to him, I felt like I was coming home. I rebuilt Petal and Stem with the money Lucien refused to let me pay back. He invested anonymously, but I knew. I always knew. The shop flourished, becoming a neighborhood staple again. Nathan and Grace helped me run it, and for the first time since my father died, I felt like I had a future. Lucien and I found our rhythm. He learned to let go of control, to trust me with his vulnerability. I learned to trust him with my heart. It wasn't always easy, we were both scarred, both broken in our own ways. But we were healing together. The Ashford empire crumbled. Lucien dismantled it piece by piece, exposing the corruption and rebuilding from the ground up. He became a different kind of CEO, one who cared about his employees, about his community, about doing the right thing. The press called it a transformation. I called it him finally becoming the man he'd always been inside. We moved into the greenhouse together. It was my idea. The estate was too big, too cold, too full of painful memories. But the greenhouse was warm, full of life, full of flowers I could tend and nurture and love. It felt like a new beginning. Lucien built us a small house attached to it. Nothing grand, nothing ostentatious. Just a home. With rooms that felt lived in, doors that didn't lock from the outside, and a garden that bloomed all year round. Sometimes, at night, I'd wake up and find him watching me. His gray eyes would be soft in the darkness, full of the same wonder he'd had when he was a boy. "I can't believe you're here," he'd whisper. "After everything." I'd press my hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. 6 months after we met, I gave him my answer. We were standing in the greenhouse, surrounded by flowers, the morning light streaming through the glass. I'd been thinking about it for weeks, trying to find the right words. But in the end, I didn't need words. I just needed him. "Lucien," I said. He turned to me, his expression curious. "I love you," I said. "I've loved you since I was 6 years old. I loved you when I was 7 and you kissed my forehead. I loved you when I forgot, and I loved you when I remembered. I've loved you my whole life." His eyes glistened. "Leo," I'm not done. I stepped closer, taking his hands. I choose you. Not because of a contract or a debt or a promise. I choose you because you're the only person who's ever made me feel whole. He broke then, pulling me into his arms, burying his face in my hair. I felt his tears on my neck, his heart pounding against my chest. I don't deserve you, he whispered. You deserve everything. I love you. I love you so much. I pulled back, just enough to look into his gray eyes. Then stay with me. Forever. He laughed through his tears. I've been staying with you for 20 years, Leo. I'm not going anywhere. Standing in the greenhouse at dawn, Lucien handed me a single flower, a forget-me. I should have given you this 20 years ago, he said. I loved you then. I love you now. I'll love you until the flowers forget to bloom. I took the flower and smiled. That's a long time. I have time, he said. And I believed him. Because the Ice King had melted. The debt was paid. The secrets were revealed. And I'd chosen to stay. We stood there in the greenhouse, surrounded by flowers, watching the sun rise over a future that was finally ours. Not because of a contract. Not because of a debt. Because of love. The kind of love that survives fire and forgetting. The kind of love that waits 20 years and never gives up. The kind of love that builds empires and tears them down, all for a single promise made by two boys by a lake. I love you, I said. I love you too, he replied. And we kissed, the flowers blooming around us, and I knew. I was home. The end. My father left me 3 things before he died. A mountain of debt, a dying flower shop, and a cryptic warning. But he also left me something else. Something I didn't understand until it was almost too late. He left me the chance to find my way back to the boy I'd loved and lost. I never imagined someone would buy me. I never imagined I'd fall in love with my captor. I never imagined I'd find my past hidden in a sealed wing of a gilded estate. But love doesn't care about what we imagine. Love just finds a way. And after everything, the fire, the forgetting, the 20 years of searching, I finally understood. Some promises are carved into your bones. Some love is forever. And some debts can never be paid with money. They can only be paid with the heart.